For the majority of the pre-time skip, Luffy and Zoro have been pretty close in power. The first we see this is during the Whiskey Peak arc. Luffy is angry with Zoro because of a misunderstanding, and we see them have their first and only duel. And this is actually one of the best fights during this arc. But from this, we see that they are relative. And now in Wano, Zoro has some of the most impressive feats of all the rooftop fighters. He scared 2 Yonko with a 1-sword style attack and managed to scar the most durable character we've ever seen in the entire series.
Emma.
One thing we must remember about Zoro is he is a strong Conqueror's Haki user, and since the start of the story, he has shown that he is capable of leading his own pirate ship if he wanted to. Similar to Silver's Rayleigh, Zoro is considered to be worthy of being his own pirate captain. He even wanted to be the leader of the Baroque Works organization. They had recruited him back in the day when he used to be a bounty hunter, but since they declined to make Zoro the leader, he refused the offer, and once again shows the makings of a conqueror. So in order to see how strong Zoro is, right now we gotta look at his portrayal. Ever since the post-time skip, Zoro has not actually been challenged by anybody in his way. And this is something that a lot of fans noticed during the post-time skip. When we arrive at Fishman Island, Zoro was literally about to murder this dude Hody Jones. In the water. How do you get beat up in your own habitat? This dude Hody was a joke. This is again one of those scenes where Oda shows that Zoro is worthy of being his own captain. And this was the first time people started to believe Zoro was equal to Luffy. I don't think he's equal to Luffy, but I think he's pretty close, or at least will be by the end of the series. Right now, not that much, but by the end of the series, I do think they will be close. Anyways, from this point on, Zoro's strength only becomes more ambiguous. Nobody actually knew how strong Zoro was, because for the entirety of the post-time skip, he was defeating his opponents with little to no effort. Zoro's next fight against Pika was not much of a challenge. Pika is Doflamingo's strongest subordinate. Zoro made quick work of Pika and he was thrown into the air and the fight was basically over. He cuts him in half effortlessly and cuts him into more pieces, and eventually Zoro makes quick work of Pika while in the air. So this is another fight where we never really got to see Zoro's full power. We finally get to the Wano arc and we get to see Zoro's real strength. And we also must remember we see Zoro fight Hawkins, and once again he's pretty much blowing by Hawkins with ease and with 2 swords. We see Zoro go up against Killer, and we all thought this was gonna be like a tough fight because it was at first, but Zoro grabs the sickle, puts it in his mouth, and proceeds to absolutely clap Killer. And you know, Zoro has a hole in his chest, so again, an easy fight. Now, when it comes to endurance, Zoro shows time and time again that he has supernatural endurance, which is why he is able to withstand so much, even with the most fatal injuries. If we look back at Arlong Park, he was amazed at Zoro's injuries, and he couldn't even believe Zoro was alive. Yet Zoro still beat Hachi and fought alongside his comrades, and even tried to fight Arlong at one point. Another example is the Mr. 1 fight. Zoro was landing attacks that were doing 0 damage to Mr. 1, and he was getting absolutely bodied. And then he gets up, and Mr. 1 can't even believe Zoro is standing up, once again showing Zoro's supernatural endurance. Zoro is a menace. We also see at Thriller Bark where nothing happened, and Zoro displays again that he has an insane amount of endurance. He actually showed comparable amounts of stamina to Luffy, maybe even more. Fast forward to Wano. Zoro has been one of the MVPs during this entire arc. He went up to the rooftop to help his captain take down 2 Yonkos, and in the battle against Kaido, Zoro actually did the second most amount of damage. He was even the second person to draw blood from Kaido. This attack right here is the combined power of 2 top-tier Haki users. These are 2 Emperors, and Zoro almost blocked it. This dude was going crazy during Roof Beast. We gotta give him his chips. He was out here keeping up with his captain until Luffy went solo, of course. Zoro is also one of the only people on the island who has advanced Conqueror's Haki, which by itself is one of the greatest achievements in the series. Just to put this into perspective, Luffy was getting destroyed by Kaido, even with Zoro and Law on his side. Then, Zoro unlocks Advanced Conqueror's Haki and he scars Kaido. And Luffy gets up, unlocks Advanced Conqueror's Haki, and he 1v1s Kaido. Advanced Conqueror's Haki is probably the greatest achievement in One Piece, literally. Unless your name is Blackbeard and you have multiple fruits. Advanced Conqueror's Haki is not just a power-up. It is the strongest form of Haki in the series. It literally allows you to impose your will on others. Zoro has taken his first step into becoming the world's strongest swordsman. Now that should be enough portrayal for now. Let's talk about Zoro's feats and abilities, because he showed one of the most impressive displays of power in this entire arc. Just like Luffy, Zoro had to unlock 2 forms of advanced Haki in order to challenge Kaido. We start off with Zoro receiving Enma from Hiyori, and it is said that Enma is a famed blade, and it extracts the Ryo from the user. So this is an important detail because we never actually see Zoro learning the 2nd and 3rd stages of Ryo, yet he was able to injure Kaido. This is because Enma is basically like training wheels for Zoro. It extracts the Ryo from him, and this is why the sword is so taxing for Zoro to use. They say that normal people would not be able to wield this sword, but obviously Zoro is special, so he can withstand the effects without any problem. because he has supernatural endurance. So the sword allowed Zoro to reach second and third stages of Ryo. Now, to further prove this point, we can look at when Zoro first cuts off the coastline by accident. The Scabbards recommend Zoro to take a new sword, but he refuses and explains that once he is used to Enma's power, he will become that much stronger. Now, I hear a lot of people giving the credit of Zoro's achievements to Enma. Part of the credit definitely goes to Enma, but a lot of this credit must go to Zoro as well. By the time he can actually casually wield Enma like Kazuki Oden did, Zoro will have gotten that much stronger. Zoro still has a long way to go until he can completely control Enma though, because even during his fight with King, Zoro makes it clear that the swords are straining him. He even goes out of his way to acknowledge Oden for being able to wield Enma with such ease. Now let's look at Roof Piece. During this battle, Zoro was able to injure Kaido with multiple different attacks, and Flying Dragon Blaze, which was just a Ryo coded attack, made Kaido dodge for the first time in the entire fight. And this is one of the best feats in the Roof Piece battle. This actually makes perfect sense because not only is Enma literally draining Zoro's Haki excessively, but Zoro's affinity for Haki is armament Haki, whereas Luffy's is Conqueror's Haki. Haki control and Haki potency are two things I want to talk about when it actually comes to Zoro. I'll mention them later in the video. When Zoro uses advanced Conqueror's Haki, there are two different versions of Zoro. So I'll start by explaining base form Zoro. Zoro starts fighting King, and in terms of physical strength, King is very comparable, and he's obviously much faster than Zoro, and of course more durable. Zoro proceeded to figure out King's weakness and dropped him with 3 attacks. Now this is still not comparable to Ashura because Ashura is Zoro's final stage, and he only uses it when he desperately needs it. When it was time to protect Luffy, Zoro steps up to the plate and he uses Ashura, scarring the most durable character in the entire series. Using Ashura, Zoro's physical stats increased just enough for him to challenge Kaido. He even managed to speed blitz him at point blank range. And this still isn't the craziest part. Zoro had around 30 broken bones in his body when he landed this attack, because before this he was trying to block the strongest attack the series has ever seen. Zoro mentions that he wasn't able to knock Kaido down, which is what he wanted to do. And then of course Luffy gets up and he obviously knocks Kaido down. So when it comes to Ashura Zoro, we could actually scale him to base form advanced Conqueror's Haki Luffy, kind of, a little bit lower, obviously. But as I mentioned before, this is not a power Zoro has full control over. When he first scarred Kaido, he didn't even know he was using Conqueror's Haki, and he was heavily injured. Now this is where Haki comes into play. The problem with Ashura is that Zoro can only use it for a short amount of time. Similar to Gear 4, Ashura seems to elevate all of Zoro's stats exponentially. However, Zoro cannot use it on command, so when compared to characters like base form advanced Conqueror's Haki Luffy or Yamato, Zoro doesn't actually stack up because he can't maintain this power long enough to have a real 1v1 fight. And based on what we've seen so far, it drains an incredible amount of Haki. And this makes sense because even base form Zoro was struggling to control his Haki in the fight against King. Zoro realized that Enma would eventually kill him if he doesn't end the fight quickly. So it's safe to assume Ashura drains even more Haki than his base form. So when it comes to Ashura Zoro, he is definitely capable of holding his own against Kaido, but with little to no stamina. So it's pretty difficult to scale that version of Zoro. He is close, but he's not exactly there yet, and it's only because of stamina. And as for base form Zoro, his physical attributes are comparable to that of a first commander like King, but I would definitely give Zoro the edge over the first commanders because his attack power is ridiculous and his Haki is just insane. Now if we compare Zoro to Yamato, Zoro was being seriously injured by King, whereas Yamato was blocking attacks from Kaido and matching attacks at one point and even landing her own attacks. We also have to consider she has been using this form of Haki much longer than Zoro has, so it makes perfect sense to why she would be this powerful. I think a lot of people have forgotten that she is also the child of the strongest creature in existence, so she has a lot of innate power at her disposal as well. Now when it comes to the future world's strongest swordsman, I believe that one day he will surpass people like Mihawk and Shanks, and maybe even Kaido. I think there's still a couple more things he has to learn before he reaches that level. For starters, Zoro still needs to learn how to forge a black blade, and on top of that, Zoro must learn how to control Ashura. If he can manage to do both of those things, I think he will definitely be able to challenge Mihawk for his title. But until that day, I would say Zoro is still a bit weaker than people like Yamato and base form advanced Conqueror's Haki Luffy. But that's all I got for today's video, so if you guys agree with me, drop a comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.